The Dutch say the F-35 software can be jailbroken. A Dutch defense minister just said something you normally only hear from a guy selling totally legit iPhone mods in a mall kiosk. He said you can jailbreak an F-35. Not as a metaphor, not as a joke. He said it out loud on a Dutch radio podcast and then immediately followed it with the verbal version of throwing the microphone into a canal. This is especially relevant right now since the U.S. has started treating European allies rather poorly. What the defense minister was likely saying was, look, don't worry about a potential American kill switch on the F-35 or the dependence on Washington. We can jailbreak the software. Hey friends, Wes here, multi-branch veteran and law grad. So this comes from Dutch State Secretary for Defense, Foyce Tuinman, speaking on BNR News Radio's Boykenstein in de Week podcast. I'm so sorry for my pronunciation. Whoop, too late. I just lost all of my subscribers from the Netherlands. I still have the Danes though. He's responding to the question a lot of European governments are suddenly asking in public. What happens if the US ever decides to cut off support for allied F-35 fleets? Tuinman's line lands because the F-35 is not a normal fighter program. It's not, we bought jets, we own jets, we fly jets. The F-35 is a flying computer tied into ground systems that manage maintenance, parts, configuration, and mission planning. That's the important bit. But a fighter jet is not an iPhone with a cracked screen. If you alter mission systems the wrong way, you can create failure modes that get pilots killed. That's not a theoretical risk. The F-35 software controls and fuses a huge amount of data, and it sits inside a very tightly managed configuration environment. Then there's certification. The F-35 program is built around standardization and configuration control. Operators don't just toss code into the jet and send it into contested airspace. Even friendly modifications need a pathway, testing, and sign-off. The minute you go rogue, you've created a jet that may not play nicely with the rest of the fleet, which has consequences for training, tactics, interoperability, and combat reliability. Then there's sustainment. This is the part that turns the jailbreak idea into a tough sell. Even if you could crack the software, you still need spare parts, depot level maintenance, and the logistics pipeline that keeps the aircraft mission capable. A jet with independent software is still a jet with tires, avionics modules, engines, and stealth coatings that don't manufacture themselves in your hangar. So the real question is not, can you jailbreak it? The real question is, can you keep it flying and lethal after you've done it? F-35 software updates and logistics has historically been managed through a cloud-connected system known as ALIS, the Autonomic Logistics Information System. Now, ALIS has been plagued with issues, which led to a replacement effort known as ODIN, the Operational Data Integrated Network. The transition to ODIN is still ongoing. Now, this matters because ALIS and ODIN are the pathway for mission data packages. Those mission data packages contain extremely sensitive planning information, including intelligence about enemy air defenses and the threat environment. You load that data before the mission and you pull data off the jet after the mission. That mission planning package is not a side feature, it is one of the weapons. The real edge is the data that tells it where the radars are, which routes keep it quiet, when to light up sensors, and how to mesh with everything else in a stack. Take that pipeline away and you've still got a very capable aircraft, but it's flying with less context and a lot more risk. So when someone says jailbreak the F-35, the first question is simple. Which part are you actually trying to crack? There are at least 4 different layers people mash into one word. According to the excellent Warzone blog, the first layer is the onboard aircraft software. This is the code running the jet's mission systems, sensor fusion, displays, and weapons. Messing with this is hard, risky, and heavily controlled. Layer 2 is the ground systems and the update pipeline. This is where ALIS and ODIN live, along with the infrastructure used to move software and data packages. Then there's layer 3, mission data and reprogramming. This is the classified threat library and planning data that makes the F-35 dangerous. And then layer 4, sustainment and parts. This is the physical world part. So a jailbreak might refer to any of these or some limited workarounds in the interfaces between them, but Tuinman did not provide details. He didn't outline a method. He also explicitly said he shouldn't say more. Now that's important because it suggests he's either speaking notionally to make a political point, or he's referencing the general reality that locked systems can often be cracked given enough expertise and motivation. The Warzone blog also noted that Israel is the only country known to have negotiated the right to install domestically developed software onto its F-35 ISs. And Israel also operates outside the A-list ODIN network in ways other countries don't. Israel also has independent depot-level maintenance. That's a huge deal because depot-level maintenance is where jets either live or die long-term. So Israel is the exception that proves the rule. If you have to negotiate special sovereignty with Washington to do what you want, then the baseline reality is dependency. The Netherlands and other operators have taken steps to firewall off aspects of software reprogramming in the past, driven by concerns about nationally sensitive information moving through the pipeline. That tells you where the power sits. But what about this so-called kill switch? Well, we've all heard the rumor the US can remotely shut down foreign F-35s at the push of a button. Well, here's an honest assessment. There's no publicly confirmed mechanism, no verifiable evidence, no hard proof that a secret remote off switch exists. The rumor spreads because it matches a real feeling. People understand dependence, and they assume dependence must include a big red button somewhere. But here's the twist. A big red button isn't even required. Sustainment is power. Parts are power. Depot-level repairs are power. The mission data and the update pipeline is power. If those channels get restricted, readiness drops fast, and it drops in ways that are painfully boring and brutally effective. Cracking software doesn't manufacture engines. It doesn't conjure tires, hydraulic components, radar modules, ejection seat parts, sensors, or low observable coatings. You can unlock the brain and still lose the body. There's also the legal and political blast radius. If a government actually tried to force unauthorized changes into a vendor-controlled weapons system, it would trigger lawsuits, contract fights, and a level of diplomatic friction that tells you the relationship is already on life support. In that kind of scenario, the supplier can respond by tightening support, restricting spares, and making sustainment slow and painful. At that point, the freed jet doesn't become an independent warrior. They become hangar residents that look great in photos and don't generate combat sorties. So Toynman's comment is useful because it pulls a sensitive conversation into daylight. It's also dangerous if anyone walks away thinking software independence equals strategic independence. It doesn't. Software is a pillar. Sustainment is the foundation. If the foundation cracks, the whole structure fails, no matter how clever your code is. Look, I get it. Europe is anxious about dependence. Even loyal allies don't love the idea that their most advanced fighters live inside a support architecture largely run through American institutions and American prime contractors. When politics get rough, people start asking uncomfortable what-if questions. Toynman's line sounds like a message aimed in two directions at once. It reassures Dutch voters that they aren't helpless, and it signals to Washington that Europeans are thinking about leverage and alternatives. It also nudges industry, meaning Europe wants more control over the systems it fights with. At the same time, he didn't trash the jet. His broader point was that even without future updates, the F-35 remains extremely capable compared to alternatives. That's not someone trying to set fire to the program, that's someone trying to square a circle. Keep the capability, reduce the vulnerability, avoid saying the quiet parts out loud. The strategic reality is messy. Europe wants tighter control of software and mission data handling. Europe also wants the F-35's current combat value, and it wants NATO to operate as a coherent air power machine. Those priorities tug against each other. If Europe truly wants sovereign combat air power, it needs more than a clever workaround. It needs manufacturing depth, sustainment capacity, depot networks, parts stockpiles, and control over key mission data processing. That's a long project measured in budgets, facilities, and years. And it isn't solved by a podcast quote. Europe also has to face a real trade-off. The F-35's strength comes partially from commonality across many operators. Shared architecture drives scale, upgrades, training pipelines, and interoperability. If every country goes down its own path, you risk fragmentation, and fragmentation creates friction during the exact moment NATO was built for. So, yes, autonomy is attractive. Too much divergence, though, can cost you combat effectiveness, especially in coalition operations where Everyone needs to plug in, share, and fight as one team. Now, back to the question everybody clicked for, can you jailbreak an F-35 like an iPhone? Yeah, in a narrow technical sense, probably, with access, expertise, and a political crisis large enough to make every lawyer within 1,000 miles start updating their resume. I think the Dutch have more than enough technical skill to be able to jailbreak the F-35, but that misses the real point. You don't need a magical kill switch to control outcomes. You control sustainment, you control parts flow, you control depot access, you control update cadence, you control the mission data ecosystem that turns a stealth jet into a stealth jet with a plan. A jet with hacked software and no spares isn't a symbol of freedom. It's a very expensive museum piece that still somehow needs a software update. You can't hack your way out of geopolitics. If Europe wants real sovereignty in combat aviation, it has to build the boring stuff. Factories, depots, repair pipelines, stockpiles, mission data processes it owns and trusts. I believe Europe can and should do this to gain more independence from the United States. But the clock is ticking. And as for my Dutch viewers, I promise I will stop mispronouncing your language. Please come back and subscribe. That's it for today, my friends. When you subscribe, it really does help me push back on Russian disinformation, which has gotten pretty bad out there. I don't know if you've noticed. It also sends a signal to the bigwigs at YouTube that you prefer human creators, not the overwhelming avalanche of AI slop. And as always, Joy Mighty Dre. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.